Welcome back to the second episode of the Hey Beauty Podcast. I'm Seraphine and
And I'm Chelsey Adia.
I am feeling so good since last week.
Me too.
It felt really good. I mean, it was
did.
like a little moments where we both were like, oh my gosh, we're doing this on our own. Totally. And I mean, I have my moments where we do miss our Aaron, but it also feels good to kind of do it on our own and kind of take the ship by the helm. But
because we're capable, we can do it.
Totally. And shout out to Aaron Graham. We miss you, but we hope you're doing well. We're going to soldier on today, you and I. So last week we were, talking about all things February. Mm-hmm. And this week we were going to talk about things that kind of give us pleasure. But because it's so close to Valentine's Day, I kind of wanted to go into the self-help, more therapeutic stuff because
I love it.
I just think it's important that we get it in there.
It's the right time to talk about it.
Yeah. And I just finished The 5 Love Languages by the recommendation of Miss Chelsey. It's crazy. I am going on my 5th year of marriage, and it took me 5 years. Well, I don't know if it took me 5 years. This book has been out for a while. But it took me on my 5th year of marriage to finally read The 5 Love Languages.
Some people never read it.
Totally.
So I think you're ahead of the game.
I love it. Well, let's kind of give a breakdown first of the 5 love languages. The 5 of them are: number 1, words of affirmation; number 2, quality time; number 3, receiving gifts; number 4, acts of service; and number 5, physical touch. Mm-hmm. So I think, how we should probably start this conversation out first is why you suggested it to me.
I think it's so insightful for anyone in a relationship or I think everyone should read this book because it's all about how you love and how to recognize how other people love, whether that's a friend, a spouse, a partner, a family member, whoever it is. It's just gives you a deeper understanding into how to fill their cup and how to make them feel the best, and then how to express what makes you feel the best. I think it's so insightful, and I think it's overlooked a lot. So I think it's beneficial in life to read.
I agree. And, I think because when I first heard about it, you hear the 5 bullet points and you're like, oh, I've read the book.
Yeah. Because
you think you know what they are. Mm-hmm. And then the book, which is written by Chapman, and it is a New York Times bestseller. The one I'm going to show the camera, Wicket ate the corners.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
She cracks me up. But Gary Chapman, he's an author, a speaker, and a counselor. And it says on the back that he has got a passion for people. And this is undeniable when you read just his thought-provoking just accounts of these people's marriages, their relationships. Mm-hmm. And he gives really good examples that, Chelsey and I are going to try and give you a little bit of what do you call cliff notes to the book?
Yeah, exactly.
And then kind of talk about, coming up on Valentine's Day, these things that maybe, you might apply in your own life. So
it's such perfect timing. I think sometimes Valentine's Day is kind of, you're on a spectrum. You either love Valentine's Day, love, or it gives you anxiety and you don't really like the holiday. But I think with Valentine's Day right around the corner, it's a good way to self-reflect and figure out what makes you happy and what you need in a relationship, and then in turn what your partner or whoever in your life may need.
I agree. I totally agree with you. It's a nice little check that I think we all get reminders of, whether it be the holidays like Christmas, or maybe it's Easter if you're religious, but it's just a way for us to get that little reminder. And this is a great way to do it. So I'm going to jump right in and ask you what you believe your love language is.
My primary love language is physical touch. And this is just with my partner. In life, I don't really I'm not a touchy person, but with my partner, I have to at least have my foot on him. I have to always touch him. But I would say my top 3 are physical touch, quality time, and words of affirmation, which words of affirmation is a recent realization for me. I'm I had an aha moment. I was like, oh, I like words of affirmation, which can be a little challenging with my husband because he's not a words of affirmation person. He just thinks you should already know.
Yeah.
So sometimes I have to remind him, and it's called reassurance.
I love it. I love it.
So, what about you?
Well, for me, I initially thought it was physical touch, and I realize there's a part in the book where it says it basically poses the question: does your love language change? You know, as you age, and what Gary Chapman says is that it can be sometimes situational, but for the most part, your love language, kind of your primary one, stays with you. So for me right now, touch is super important because I'm witnessing my own family. Like my father is going through this ALS diagnosis, and he's so sensitive to touch, right? Any little like wrong touch can make him feel sore, or he can't really move his legs. So like everything tactile is so in my face right now. And I also realize, like, when I'm feeling sad, before I would always kind of retreat into myself, but lately I've realized the moments I feel very sad, I think seeing my dad feel so isolated in his body has amplified my need of wanting to be touched, especially when I'm sad or feeling lonely. So it hasn't always been that way. And I know my husband's always been like, wow, like you can go without touch for a long time. And it doesn't feel good because men, I think, they are sexual creatures for the most part. But it has changed. And honey, if you're listening, you can touch me some more. But when it comes to really my love language, I would have to say it's a real big tie between quality time and, I think it's that sense of like acts of service.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say these two is quality time is my husband's really busy. My dad was always really busy. And, in therapy, you see this correlation between your relationship with your father, your relationship with your husband.
Yeah.
And, when my husband gives me time, a lot of times it's when he can fit it in. And then when we're together, a lot of times there's a lot of distractions in both of our lives. And it kind of stinks when you're sitting across from someone and, I'm on the phone or he's on the phone, or, we're there, but we're like watching the TV. So
yeah, exactly. It doesn't feel the same.
It doesn't. So we're really working on that. I am especially. And then acts of service. I never thought I'd be an acts of service person. But again, I'm really witnessing it through my dad's illness. The other day, my mom got so upset because my sister was on the phone with this company for this. It's called a Hoyer lift. It helps lift someone from point A to point B because my dad is too heavy for my mom. And there was a piece missing, and my sister was on the phone with this company almost every single day, like trying to get this piece. And my mom calls me and she's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe your poor sister. Like, I can't believe she's doing this. And I just feel so bad. And I'm like, Mom, this is her way of showing love for our father and for you. It's literally an act of service. And the one thing my father has said to us through this all is, the thing that you can do that shows me your love right now is being there for your mother in any capacity. So, I've realized how much doing things for my mom feels good. And then in return, it feels good when my husband comes home and like it's cold right now. It's February, it's freezing. And to take the dogs out like 3 or 4 times a day is tough. And with my little puppy, she's peeing and pooping everywhere. So it's nice, at night when I've changed into my PJs that I don't have to get on my big coat. Like those little things, washing the dishes, taking out the trash, those are those moments where you're like, oh, you actually really care,
I feel like they always say it's in the little things that count. And I feel like all of these love language, it's the little things. And it's so true. I mean, there are little details, little thoughts, like thoughtfulness things, they're just minor, but to us, they mean so much.
Yeah.
So I think this is really taking the time to figure out the little details that will make the biggest difference in your partner in your own life.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I was going to say something about, I think the thought left, so we can continue.
We'll get it back.
It left.
We'll
left the building.
We'll kind of dive in. And I'm going to draw some quotes out of the book, and we're just going to kind of go through it all. So one of the main things when they start out the book, they say, or actually Gary does, he says, isolation is devastating to the human psyche. It is basically like solitary confinement is basically considered the worst punishment for humans.
We're wired for connections.
Totally.
Like human beings are wired to be connected to someone. So relationships are so insanely important to us, and people don't realize that.
It's amazing. Even if you are a person who is kind of a lone wolf, you have to think about the things in life that help you feel grounded. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, you'll be surprised that it all comes back to even those moments when you are on your own, you are secluded, the things that bring you back with an exchange with someone. Mm-hmm. So I think it's such another beautiful quote in the book is, our most basic emotional need is not to fall in love, but to be genuinely loved by another, to know a love that grows out of reason and choice, not by instinct.
Interesting.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that because I think what ends up happening is we fall in love. Mm-hmm. And Gary Chapman talks about the 2 years of electricity and trying to please your person. And you're being all these different things for this person that you think they are. And then all of a sudden, it kind of starts to wear you down. And you kind of realize, wait a second, I'm actually this way.
Yeah.
And he or she or they are that way. Mm-hmm. So when you get out of the love haze, you have to really look at the things that are important to you and important to that person to keep it going.
Yes, exactly.
So
because I feel like that's so, I think everyone has that timeline when they're starting a relationship with someone. It can last for 6 months. It could last for 2 years, like you said, where you're trying to be what the other person wants. You're trying to put on this act, like your best face. But then eventually, to get a deeper love, you're going to have to peel back the layers and be not so perfect and show the other person exactly who you are. And that's so crazy. My husband and I, our love is way deeper than it ever has been. And we know everything. He's the only person in my life that knows every single good and bad anxieties, insecurities, everything that goes down through my head, he knows. And because I've been able to be so vulnerable with him and not put on this perfect face, it allowed us to really grow.
It's tough too, because once the perfect mask comes down, I can be the first to attest. I think it's also a part of my astrology too, of Gemini, of these kind of two faces, but I also have this kind of hyper perfectionist kind of quality in me.
I totally get that from you. I know you're like that.
And it's exhausting to watch sometimes.
It's exhausting to be that. We all have that tendency to want to strive for perfection and be our hardest critic. But I think with you, it's obviously different than a marriage or whatever, but I have also grown. I see underneath your perfection, you have the kindest heart, just oozing with love. You are seriously the sweetest of hearts. And when you don't know you that well, you're pretty intimidating.
And it's crazy to think about perception versus reality.
Yeah.
And it also has to do a lot with understanding people and taking time. I think I've realized a lot in this book too, that it's not easy to get to know someone. And again, these love languages are also used in friendship,
Yes.
in like your relationship with your children, your relationship with your family. So it's, again, I think it's interesting because we've known each other now. We're going on, getting into multiple years, but it's weird in the beginning because again, you are in that like pre-dating stage, even in friendships of like, well, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And then when you really
Unless you are my boss.
I know, right? So it's so tough. You're like, huh?
And we were in your house. So like, I think we're the same in that way. Like my house is my sanctuary and I'm really like, no one really comes to my house right now because there's nothing to see. But if it was nice, and like I would only have like certain people over. So you're just careful. I remember the first time we sat down with Giovanna at Bristol, I think. I could tell you were kind of feeling me out, obviously, because you were considering hiring me for the job. And I totally understood that. You're just careful about like who you let into your life,
Totally.
which is exactly how I am. So I think that's why it took so long for us to really get closer, because we were both like, it just took time for the both of us.
Totally. And the other thing that's so crazy is as you let down your walls, people will start to understand the way you want to be held in love, whether it be in a relationship, in friendship, wherever. And once they know how to hold you, they can also know how to hurt you.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting part of this book too. So we're going to dive in with the first one, which is words of affirmation. So basically it's verbal compliments. And they're far greater motivators than, nagging, like bitchy words. Like, why aren't you taking out the garbage? That kind of stuff. Your spouse usually has some untapped potential, I think, in a lot of areas of life. And a lot of times it takes our encouraging words to get them on track.
Yeah.
I think.
You mean with our love language?
With our love language, I think, like for instance, my podcast.
Yeah.
There was a really low point over the holidays where I was so frustrated and I was like ready to throw in the towel. And between you and between my husband and my sisters, they used words of affirmation to steer me in the direction of, no, you can do this. You did the same thing. We were sitting down. You're like, I really think that if we take the time with it, these are the things that are your strong suits, and let's get more personal with it. And again, these are words you're communicating to me to give me that confidence to steer me in the right direction.
Yeah.
Do you think, like for instance, when people give you words of affirmation, are you more complimentary based, motivational based? Like, what are the words that really fill up your tank?
I would say from a friendship and family would be like motivation based, because compliments kind of make me feel uncomfortable. I don't really know what to say back. For my husband, though, all of them.
Yeah.
I just like, from the number one person in your life, it just feels good to hear it. And he's more of like showing it.
Yeah.
But I would say more motivational. People, it kind of like, it's kind of a double-edged sword with me, though, because if I have people around me, like friends or something, that believe in me and what I'm doing and like know I'm capable of it, I love it. It gives me energy. But I also feel, which is just a problem I have with myself, I also feel like more pressure. So it honestly kind of gives me a little anxiety, like I have to live up to that standard.
Yeah.
I have to live up to their expectations. And that's really bitten me in the butt like a few times, just because of the relationship I have with myself in some cases. And I've gotten way better throughout the years, but that imposter syndrome thing.
Oh, I know.
It's really,
we both have it in our veins.
Yes, we do.
I feel like when I think about the words of affirmation I like coming from my husband, usually they are the things that I think sometimes irritate them it's the qualities in myself that irritate him the most. So for instance, I am a stickler for my appearance, and I'm always making jokes about my age, and he's always like, God, you know you are like healthy.
Yeah.
You look good for your age. He's like, why do you have to always freaking say it? And the funny thing is I want him to say it to me.
Yes.
So it's almost like me pointing out like, hey, look it, I'm doing these things to keep this up. And it actually means the most when it comes from him. I think the other thing that is hard is when he gives me advice on things, but I will be super sensitive about, well, don't you see that I'm doing it? So sometimes
I get the same way.
It's like you want them to say, if I had my wish, it would be like, wow, I've watched you in the last week, things have really changed. And actually this week is a prime example. When you gave me the call and you're like, oh my gosh, we just put the episode up and there was 127 downloads. I text messaged him and right away he was like, I'm so proud of you. You guys are doing great.
That's awesome.
So it felt so good. It felt so good.
Yeah.
On the reverse side, we've been there to where it's been like, well, what can you do better? And again, not that isn't good to have, but when it comes to the love languages,
I think that's a really common thing with parents too.
Yeah.
Like kids, they get, and I think sometimes that's just a person, they know that what your potential is and they believe in you. So they want you to push yourself until you get there.
Yeah.
And they don't really see that, like, maybe that person just wants you to appreciate what they have right now. Like, for example, a kid, maybe they got like 95% on a test and they're like so excited. They worked so hard. They studied, they did everything they could do. They gave it their all. And then their dad or their mom is like, that's great, but like, let's strive for 100% next time. That's exactly how my dad is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's tough.
Or was. He's not really like that anymore.
They change. They do. My
They
father has
soften.
changed so much. He's so we the other thing that was interesting is as we were going through this book, there are simple words like of affirmation that are literally statements like, I know, I care, I am with you.
Yes,
there's even a question of how can I help, which is like, okay. And then
which is kind of crossing into acts of service.
Yes, it really is.
Yeah.
It is. The last quote in this little section, I think that was really interesting was they said, love doesn't keep a score of wrongs. Love doesn't bring up past failures. None of us is perfect. We cannot erase the past. We can only confess it and agree it was wrong. We can ask for forgiveness and try to act differently in the future. And if we choose to forgive, then intimacy can be restored. And forgiveness is that way.
Yeah, it is.
I really think that, if you're going into words of affirmation, you really need to think about the words you're choosing. And then, you have to look at this sense of like, there's this other kind of saying of don't mess up every day with yesterday. Don't go to the past. It's like, don't bring today's failures, into, or don't bring, don't bring into today the failures of yesterday, because it just doesn't add up. Like you have to move forward.
You do.
Can't bring up the stuff from the past,
No, there's life is like way too short to keep harping on something that you can't even change.
Yeah.
You can't even change it. So,
well, as we go kind of forward into the next love language, it's quality time is number 2. Mm-hmm. To give someone your undivided attention.
Yes.
When you don't give someone time, the love tank feels empty. Mm-hmm. Remember Vicky from The Real Housewives of the Love Tank? She read this book and boy, she went with it. Vicky from Real Housewives of OC.
Vicky Gunvalson, we love her, miss her.
We do.
Well, for this one, I would say the most precious thing in life is time.
Yeah.
So I think if you can give someone your time, that's like giving them everything. That's about it.
Yeah, it is. It is. Oh, you can. Is that? Oh my God. Ace just blew a fart beyond control. Oh my God. Oh my God. He is a gastronomical Frenchie. I love him so much.
He's gassy.
He is a gassy boy. Wow.
Okay.
Anyways. He's giving us quality farts, not quality time. Well, I guess it's quality time if he's in the room. But anyway, so back at it.
So I think that quality time is like the most valuable thing. Time is the most valuable thing. You can never get it anymore. You can never get it back. So if you're choosing to spend your time with someone, that says a lot.
It does. I think what's interesting is words of affirmation, like what we were talking about before, focus on what we're saying, right? Mm-hmm. But whereas quality time and quality conversation in particular, I think what women want, that focuses on what we're hearing. Yeah. So I think it's interesting to think about like what your quality time is, because another quality time point I realized was, if you're doing something together and, you're giving your full attention to that other person, the vehicle, the activity is actually like the vehicle that creates that sense of togetherness. Mm-hmm. It really isn't the fact that you went, the walk in of itself is not the quality time. Yeah. It's the fact that you're with your spouse. You're taking an hour out of your day, exactly, or 30 minutes or whatever, and you're walking side by side, and you're in sync with each other.
Yes, I was just thinking about when we were talking about quality time, what things, like what would I describe as quality time, and it's literally we could be doing anything as long as we're not on our phones, as long as I'm listening and he's listening. And that's about it. We could be sitting on the couch watching a movie. We could be on a road trip in the car. We could be laying in bed, whatever it is. Yeah. And honestly, I will say, if we're going to be on our phones, we're going to be on the same phone playing a game.
I love that. And I think you're the one who told me, did you guys have the split headphones to listen to the same song?
I think that might have been Aaron.
Oh, I think it was Aaron. Mm-hmm. Good old Aaron Graham. I love that, where you're you've got the same headset on, but you're playing, because me and my husband love to play music. We usually do it on car rides or motorcycle rides, and I always will create a playlist. And it's such a cool way of connecting, because we love music. We love concerts. Mm-hmm. Appreciate. So there was an example in the book that I thought was really interesting of a husband who really loves baseball, and his wife was somebody who, she was going through a lot. The first thing that happened was they had a baby, right? Yeah. And the husband goes, and she has the baby. He's there for the delivery, and then what does he do? He leaves immediately to go play baseball, and she's like,
"Oh no.
Huh?
No, no, no."
And then the second time is her mom passes away, and he goes to the funeral, and then what does he do? He leaves the funeral and he goes to play baseball. Oh, so God. The couple's in therapy, and she's like, he loves baseball more than me. That's what she's saying to herself.
Because that's what he's showing her.
Totally. So the husband talks about how baseball in general is like something he does for himself that he loves. And, describing going to baseball games with his wife, and the fact that after his baby was born, he wanted to celebrate the birth of his child with his friends. And again, kind of that love language of I'm here with my friends, and it's a love language with his friends of I'm going to basically share with you this big event in my life. Yeah. But his wife wasn't a part of it. And then with the death of her mom, he had done acts of service through the whole time period of her mom passing, and he thought he had done his job. So, he was like, well, I need to blow off some steam and go. Mm-hmm. And the wife, her love language, which we're going to get into, I think next, is actual, when you say gifts, she wanted the gift of her husband's presence. Mm. So a lot of times I think, people get confused of when we're in situations of quality time versus when you just want someone there. And
interesting perspective.
I've really realized that lately too, again, with, my father, and having these moments of kind of going over to help out with my mom, and, feeling like when I come back, my husband wants to cheer me up and let's go, let's do something. And I'm like, I'm just not up for it, And it's not that I don't want to spend time with my husband. There's just this sense of I just want him around me. Yeah. And I think quality time can get a little misconstrued with just having the person there. And, it's tough. I think there's a balancing act between receiving the gift of someone's presence versus like we're doing an activity, we're exchanging energy with each other. So to kind of clarify, which I like this, was for tips of quality time is number one, when you're in conversation, it's simple. Maintain eye contact while your spouse is talking and keep your mind from wandering.
That's so powerful.
And it's, there's so much vulnerability in eye contact. And I think a lot of times when people need to if they feel like they're on a vulnerable topic of conversation, a lot of times people can't handle that. But I think in marriage, it's pretty important to be able to look into each other's eyes and be like, I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
The second one is don't listen to your spouse and do something else at the same time, unless it's like, you're cleaning up the dishes after dinner and you've had that quality conversation and maybe you're finishing it up. But for the most part, try not to be on your phone. Yeah. Try not to be, going onto your computer going, oh yeah, I'm listening to you, honey.
Yeah.
And then the third in this list is listen for feelings. What emotion is your spouse feeling? And repeating back, like, it sounds to me like you're feeling disappointed because I forgot, insert whatever here. And the last two are observe body language, because body language can speak millions
yes, it can.
of words. 5 is refuse to interrupt. Ooh, this one's tough for me. My objective is not to defend myself or to set you straight. It is to understand you, which I love. I think it is such a interesting fact to know. I've learned it from this book that every 17 seconds, our brain, that's as much as it can pretty much handle to just be quiet and listen. And then all we want to do is jump in and either problem solve or keep going.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting, isn't it?
That is really interesting. But it's important too to listen and understand what someone's saying before you're trying to speak. I'm going to reference my husband because that's the one that I always have conversations with. He really wants me to listen before I speak because I'm quick to say something. He's like, you're not listening to me. You're waiting till I'm done until you talk. I'm like, yeah, you're right.
It's so true. It is a skill that I am starting to hone in.
Even when we sit here, like I just did.
Oh, totally.
I'm like, I have a thought in my head. I'm going to say it.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean?
Totally. When I was listening to our last podcast, I was like, please shut up, Seraphine. Just shut up. Let Chelsey talk. But we'll get there, ebb and flow in it. The other thing that I loved was this reference to, it's a metaphor for you to understand what kind of communicator you are.
Okay.
So there are dead seas and babbling brooks.
Uh-huh.
So dead seas are people that take in, they're feeling things. They take in information. They bring it in to their thought patterns, their emotions. They digest it, they consider it, and then what do? They basically anchor it and they put it into the bottom of the sea and they hold those emotions and feelings there. Whereas babbling brooks, aka Seraphine Arocha, is wanting to communicate everything he or she or they are feeling at that moment, and they are filling up the space with their words and their knowledge and their feelings and their discomforts and whatever. And the funny thing is that they say in a lot of these psychology books, and again in this book in particular, that in the first 2 years, this honeymoon phase, is that it will work. It will work great. And usually a dead sea ends up with a babbling brook. Yeah. And then after 2 years, what happens is the babbling brook goes, oh my God, I don't know anything about my partner. And then the dead sea goes, I'm really tired of hearing all this stuff from my partner.
Yeah.
And you have to make a decision of how to interchange the roles And again, you can still be a babbling brook, but maybe take some cues from the Dead Sea and learn and ask some questions to the partner that may not be talking.
I totally see that. And I also don't think that if you're listening to this right now and you're like, oh shit, I'm a babbling brook and my partner is a Dead Sea, like that doesn't mean you're doomed.
No.
Like everything is, you know, you learn stuff about it and maybe you're thinking, maybe my partner wants me to be quiet for a little bit and just sit in silence. Maybe I'll try that tonight. And you might get a positive result.
And for all you, there's Ace sneezing away. He agrees.
He's definitely a Dead Sea.
He is a Dead Sea
and
for sure.
She is a babbling brook.
Wicket is for sure a babbling brook. And for all of you Dead Sea people out there, it's not, I think babbling brooks will get in their head because of course you're too much, you're over talking. But Dead Sea people, what I'll ask you is to try offering up a little bit more conversation in those moments and maybe interrupt a few more times. And you'll be surprised. Babbling brooks sometimes are so exhausted that they'll be so happy to shut up.
You know what's crazy is I would say in day-to-day life, I'm more of a Dead Sea. Like I like to just listen. But with my husband, I'm more of the babbling brooks and he's more of the Dead Sea. But I will notice this. If I shut up, he will talk. He talks more. He talks more than me. If I just shut up and let him talk when he wants to, he's going to talk. So maybe if you're babbling brooks and you're like, he doesn't talk, or if she doesn't talk or they don't talk, I just want to just try being quiet for a little bit and seeing if maybe they want to speak up and say something. You never know.
I've been addicted to the silence lately. We'll get into that a little later.
Nice.
But it is nice.
Yeah.
So I think from here, the ingredients of a quality activity, just know at least one of you wants to do it.
Yeah, that's important.
That is totally important. Number 2 is the other is willing to do it. Because no one likes to be like, hey, let's go jump out of a plane and then induce anxiety, fear, all the things in their partner. And then they're like, this is divorce because I can't jump out of a plane. Number 3, both of you know why you were doing it. It's to express love by being together. And I guess, you need to ask, what in your relationship detracts from spending quality time? Think about that. And then maybe, take some tips from, what we suggested.
One thing I have to say about quality time, that's dating your partner. That's dating them. And something my sister-in-law gave me at my bridal shower that I thought was so genius is this book of random date ideas. Basically, I think it's like Adventuring with You or something like that. I'll have to think of what it's called, but basically you open it up and you pick a page and it's a scratch off. And you scratch off what it is, and it tells you exactly how much time you're going to need, how much money it's going to take, and like the best, if it's a day or night activity, and then you take a Polaroid of yourselves doing it and you put it in the book.
I love that.
It's
from the Polaroid girl herself. I love it. That is so cool.
You would love it. It's
I'll
a
have
really
to find
cute
that
idea.
book.
I will think of it and then I'll post it on our Instagram.
Yes.
A link to it so that if you're interested in something like that, it's really cool. We haven't started it yet, but I've been meaning to start it.
And what a great Valentine's Day present too.
It is a great Valentine's Day present. Also, another thing that I found out that is really cool to get to know your partner if maybe they are a Dead Sea is I don't know if you guys are familiar with the We're Not Really Strangers Instagram account, but basically this woman started, you gotta look it up, but basically this woman started an Instagram account and she just took like cards and wrote little sayings on them, and it became such a craze and so popular that she came up with like a game. It's a card game. You can get it at Target. It's $25.
I love it.
And basically you just pick a card. They have a relationship version and they have like a regular version. You pick a card and it asks a question and you have to answer it.
That's
and
so
it's
cool.
like to get to know yourself and your partner better. And I think that is so genius, especially in today when this is not an uncommon thing to be distracted, like with our social media and our cell phones, like it is all too common. So don't be worried if you're like, oh, I just like, I don't really know my partner that well. Just get this game or get something like it, or maybe just look up an app. I'm sure there's an app that does the same thing. And ask your partner questions from it. It's not really you asking. It's just the card game.
Exactly. It's a conversation starter. And again, it's just adding a little spice into the pot. You know, I like it. So the number 3, we're going to go into receiving gifts. So I think, before you even can start to think about giving gifts to other people, you have to kind of know what to give to yourself.
Yeah.
I think that, one thing I have learned from being a serial monogamist most of my life was I never really kind of found out what are the things that I really like myself. I was always kind of being this chameleon for my partner.
Which is also very common.
It is. And it's not wrong.
It's not wrong.
It's just
Kim Kardashian is a prime example.
100%. 100%. And I think that, for a lot of people, it's kind of interesting when you'll watch the pattern of your relationships and you'll realize like, oh, I really am not a mountain climber person. I mean, like, I'm doing this because I'm with, so-and-so who is like Mr. Athletic. So I think, it's just like the movie we watched with Nina Dobrev for the holidays.
Yes, that's so true. That's a really good example.
So as we go into receiving gifts, if you don't know how to give to yourself, then, you better start learning. So to me, I think about traveling, where I like to go and travel, little things like it's winter. Like, are you a person who needs like some sunshine in your life?
Yeah.
Go get a vitamin D lamp. Give yourself a little love that way.
So helpful. I didn't realize that until a couple years ago. Like, a lot of people suffer from seasonal depression. I'm a sunshine person.
Yep.
And you can get B12 shots or vitamin D shots. I'm sorry. That kind of give you that boost. And then also those lamps, you can buy them from Amazon. They're cheap.
Yep.
And you just sit in front of it for 5 minutes and you feel like, I just love that feeling of like closing my eyes and the sunshine just beating down on me. But it's not really that great for your skin.
I know, right? I know. I think for me, working out and actually not just teaching my classes, but doing it for myself.
Yeah, you have to remember to do that.
I also love I like my 10-minute, at least my 10-minute beauty routine, which you can watch on TikTok.
I love that too. My mom despises like putting on her makeup. I'm like, it is my favorite part of the day.
It is. It's like just
I put on like a little, I put my phone on the stand and I watch like Euphoria or something and I'm doing my makeup. I'm like looking.
It's the best. It is like between, and I love that sense of just having a little bit of something in the background.
Yeah.
And you giving yourself that moment of like, hey girl, looking good, girl.
Yeah.
I love it. It's good stuff. So figure out the little things you can do for yourself. But we go into gift giving and I really loved understanding the part about what I talked about previously with physical presence in the time of crisis is one of the most powerful gifts you can give. If your spouse's primary if your spouse's primary love language is receiving gifts, the thing is your body, your physical body becomes the symbol of love or the gift.
Yeah.
And if you remove the symbol and that sense of love, that symbol of love is physically gone, it is crushing to the person that the gift of your presence. And I really understand that now. Now I really see that in like the last couple of months where, if you're having an argument with your spouse and they take themselves physically out of your realm and you're like, oh my God, just having the person near me is a gift.
I feel that. Also, I want to say something about gift giving. I feel like a lot of people feel shame for wanting to receive a gift, even if it's like a material thing. There is no shame in that. I mean, speaking of Valentine's Day, who doesn't love a box of chocolates and flowers? Like, that stuff is nice too. Do not feel shame because maybe you're like, I feel like I shouldn't like gifts because it's materialistic and there's a bad stigma around it. But I actually, that's how I feel love. If someone presents me with like a piece of jewelry or something, like that makes me feel loved.
100%.
That's okay.
And again, I think a lot of people who do like to receive gifts, you'd be surprised. A lot of the people that like gifts actually come from really modest backgrounds
Yeah.
where they didn't get a lot of things, especially when they were younger.
I can totally see that. Also, a different gift that you could give someone, something that I like to do around Christmas time, instead of me and Hassan giving each other like physical gifts, we go on a trip together, which kind of encompasses a lot of these love languages, but it's also a gift.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't have to be like a tangible thing. Like you said, it could be the person's presence. It could be going on a trip together, making memories. I think memories is the gift.
I think it is. And I mean, a really great little, I love that they gave this little grouping at the end of the chapter.
Yeah.
They said that handmade gifts, so something like if you knit, if you're like, I thought it was really cool. I had a friend who was a jewelry designer, and she would literally like hand engrave stuff for her friends. It was so
That's
beautiful. You've got nature gifts, right?
Yeah.
If you're someone who's an outdoors person and you find a piece of like rock or a feather or something like that, again, if you're with that outdoorsy climber person and you're the same way, like, you would be surprised that taking a photograph out in Joshua Tree of a moment where you were together will be the most amazing gift if you have it framed with a little reference to it. Symbolic gifts. I think this one is really lovely. My mom always would give symbolic gifts to where it may not be something that you understand right away. Like, you know, she would be somebody who would give you, like, I remember she gave me it was like from Australia, a little Mari doll. And I mean,
cool.
It was so cool because, again, I was like, okay, I know I visited here with you when I was like 4 years old.
Yeah.
But she had this whole little thing written up about, you know, my childhood and me being a little girl and exploring when I was little. And I mean, to me,
cool.
it's cool. Those gifts that make you like recall back to an instance with that person. A gift idea notebook, I think, is really good, where if you're talking to a friend, oops, I don't know what I threw across the table. But if, like, for instance, if I'm talking to you and you say to me like, oh my gosh, I love that necklace that Carrie Bradshaw's wearing with the heart on, just like that. Then I write down, like, Chelsey, like the heart necklace.
Yes.
And maybe I can't afford that $13,000 necklace, but
Did you look that up?
I did, because I love that necklace. But I was like, damn, that's expensive.
Yeah.
Because I was about to be like, honey.
Yeah.
Remember, gift of presents, a book you can read together.
I
think that's a great idea. I think
think
it's a great idea.
That's quality time too.
And then the last one I think is really cool is a lasting tribute. So like to a charity, to where, again, you're giving them a gift to something to, like, if they love dogs, AKA me, if you do like a donation every year on their birthday or for their wedding, that's a really cool gift and thoughtful.
It is really cool.
So we move on to acts of service.
Yes.
So I want to know, is there anyone in your life who is an active service person?
Probably my mom. My mom's probably an active service person. If I am over at her house and I do, she's definitely an active service. I'm thinking about it right now. If I do her dishes, if I put her dishes away, if I do her laundry, she's extra grateful. And on the contrary, if things aren't done for her, she gets really annoyed. She's like, I do everything for everyone else. I need someone to do something for me. So taking care of her in that way. So my mom, for sure. What about you?
I have to say, I would be interested to see if Gary Chapman would agree with us. I think that acts of service a lot of times goes into the child or mother-father relationship. Because mothers and fathers, for the most part, I think when it comes to gift giving, there just comes a point in time where they don't need gifts anymore.
Yeah.
And then when you think about physical touch, I think it's more when you're younger, not so much when you're older. When it comes to what's one of the other ones?
Words of affirmation.
Yeah, I think quality time might be one, for sure. But acts of service, I mean, the laundry list is like cooking a meal, setting a table, emptying the dishwasher, vacuuming, taking the dogs out, changing a baby's diaper, picking up a prescription, I love this one. The oil change on a car. You know, every time that happens and you're like, ugh,
It's
car
dreadful.
maintenance.
Yeah.
It stinks,
Dreadful.
you
Yeah.
know? Paying the bills, trimming the shrubs, dealing with the landlord, insurance companies, lawyers, taking out the garbage. I mean, these are things that, I mean, I'm watching now with my parents and my dad kind of getting his affairs into like in order because he's got this illness. These are things that are not fun to do.
No.
And as a child or as a friend or as a family member, to step in and do these for someone, it alleviates so much stress.
For sure.
And therefore, I think can really make people feel loved. But I do think on the flip side, like my mom trying to, you know, kind of put herself in the shoes of my sister, you know, looking up, you know, the stuff for the wheelchair. She, in her brain, I think is like, oh my gosh, she's doing this for me and I'm putting all this burden on her. And it's about how you frame up what your love language is. Mm-hmm. And again, the way that my sister really pulled through for my parents was through this act of love, of this act of service.
I think I would agree with you though. It's like the parent-child relationship because hearing you talk about it, I'm like, well, my dad is also active service person too. Yeah. And that's how he shows love. He'll, if I leave my car over at his house, if I'm out of town, I know for a fact when I come back, it will be a full tank of gas, clean and ready to go.
And I think
interesting.
It is. It's really interesting. I think it also has a lot to do with when you have a lot on your plate.
Yes. I think so too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Active service is one of those things that I think you can take for granted because one of the examples they give in the book is about a couple when they first dated, when the husband was a boyfriend. His wife was living with her family and she had a lot of responsibility. Mm-hmm. And when they were boyfriend and girlfriend, you know, he would go over, help her with the dishes, help her with her younger sisters and brothers, tucking them into bed and then hanging out with her at night. And when they got married, it was interesting because he stopped doing those things because he started to work. Yeah. And he was like, well, you're my wife now. This is kind of your duty. Yeah. And she was like, wait a second. This was the thing that allowed me to feel loved. You did it when we were dating, but as soon as you took on the husband role, then you stopped doing the acts of service. Yeah. So it's interesting. I think, you know, this is a conversation piece that I think will be in all marriages, but I think it'll also be a lot in the daughter, daughter, you know, when I think about my mother, I think it's a lot in that parental relationship as well. So when did you first know, has physical touch always been something in your life that you've needed or is it? Okay, interesting.
From my parents, I do like to cuddle up to them but it's not incessant. Like I don't need to do it all the time, but with my husband, yes, it's hilarious because my husband is huge. You know this. He's 6'10", 300 pounds, and we have a queen size bed. And I'm so funny. It's a joke now. My mom laughs at us because we've told her. He laughs at me because I will cuddle up to him so hard. I push him to the one quarter of the bed, and I'm on top, like I'm like cuddled onto him. And then there's this whole other half of the bed. And he's the biggest guy ever.
Oh my God.
Barely fit on the bed anyway.
He needs a California king.
He does. Someday we will get that. But for now, it's so funny. Like we have a couch and my mom's like, you really only need half the couch. I'm like, that's pretty accurate. I'm not changing anything.
I love it.
So with him, like, yes, I have got to be touching him at all times. What about you?
I think it did change a lot for me. I mean, I'm somebody who I'm in a very physical industry, being a yoga instructor.
Yes.
And I think because from a young age, touch has always been something that I've been very respectful of because for me, I understand how touch can be manipulated in a way that, I mean, it can hurt you too. Mm-hmm. So I've been a little bit protective of it, and it takes a lot for me. I am somebody who I'm okay. Like I'll reach out and I'll touch someone on their shoulder.
Yeah.
I don't usually go in right away for the hug unless they're a really close friend. Even in my yoga classes, I, from the very beginning, was somebody who was like, I'm not going to give physical adjustments on someone unless I have their permission and if I'm comfortable with it, because it's super intimate to put your hands on anyone's body. I think even when you're shaking hands, I remember I had a friend who was, I mean, very like when I say Jewish, we're talking like we're not going to touch hands with a female. Mm-hmm. And that was another thing that was very interesting. I've read a lot about just touch in general when someone is willing to give you their hand versus somebody who brushes a hair out of your cheek. All that intimacy and touch is so important, I think, to, number one, feel comfortable in your own self and then understand the boundaries of the person that you're with. The thing that was interesting about this in the book was they talked a lot about people who love physical touch. If their partner cheats, that can be bone crushing, because obviously if they feel like touch is like your body is a temple, you're worshiping at, the altar of the person that you love, and your partner is willing to do it with someone else, it can shatter your heart. And
absolutely
reading that, I was like, oh my God, it was pretty heavy stuff. So I think when it comes to touch, I love it. Right now I'm craving it more than ever from my husband. And
Johnny, if you're listening.
I know, Johnny, come touch me. I love it. But what I liked about kind of putting all 5 of these together and this wrap up in the book, they asked first at the end, because if you're really trying to figure out like what your love languages are, the first one is, what do you most desire from your spouse? Think about that. Mm-hmm. And what makes you feel loved above all else? Then it is, what does your spouse do or say or fail to do or say that hurts you deeply? These are some questions that, if you can answer them, can kind of help figure out where your love language is. As we wrap this up, I have to say, the last thing I think that will help you figure out your love language, even if you're not in a romantic relationship, is picture your perfect mate. And that can give you insight into your primary love language. I mean, when you create that list of who your person is, that can give you a lot of insight. This book, Chelsey, thank you so much for telling me to read it. I love it. Again, it's called The 5 Love Languages, The Secret to Love That Lasts. It's by Gary Chapman, and it's a quick read. Over 12 million copies have been sold. I understand why.
When was it written?
This was written and updated, because it has been updated. I love how they changed.
I love that.
I do too, because,
times are changing.
It was written first in 1992.
Wow.
And it has been updated since then. This one is actually 2015, but there's actually another one that's brand new as well. Actually, it says your copyright 1973, but I don't know what that is. For Gary Chapman, it was 1992 to 2015 for this one. So anyway, all I can tell you is this is amazing. I love it.
I'm so glad.
Such good stuff here. Any final thoughts?
I'm just going to say maybe maybe we'll do another kind of deep dive into a self-help book or something. Yeah. Maybe not next week, but in the next month or so. Let us know if you guys like this kind of
content. Yeah.
Yeah, because we found it very interesting. I hope you guys did. And let us know what your love language is, if we helped you with with discovering more about maybe what you like and maybe recognizing what your partner likes. But I'm really curious what your love languages are. And like I said, like mine, I have more than one. Seraphine has more than one. So you're not just like married to one love language. But that's all I have for today.
Well, beauties, life is beautiful, and it's even more beautiful with love in it.
It is.
Thank you so much for listening to our deep dive into the 5 love languages. Next week, we are going to be going into all the things that are filling up our tanks of fun. So think beauty, fashion, TV, all that good stuff.
So fun.
Such good stuff.
Follow our Instagram at Hey Beauty Podcast, exactly how it sounds. We're going to do some reels of the 5 love languages, maybe give you guys some ideas.
And we even have a TikTok, so check us out.
TikTok at Hey Beauty Podcast.
We love you guys.
Love you.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.